That's this is Celia Vences of Algarve Assistance, and if you'd like to share your screen, I think we can see that now, and I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
Hello, good morning to everyone. So thank you for the invitation to be here today. I will speaking regarding mortgage, rentals, car matriculation, and driving license. First, this is the service that my company offers: mortgage and loans, rentals, vehicle matriculation with tax or tax exemption, exchange or registered driving license, fiscal representation, and non-habitual residence tax, especially then submit the tax returns. So, mortgage and loans, there are quite different ones. We have for residential, we have for second house or investment or non-resident, plot plus construction, mortgage transference, and equity release. In Portugal is really quite a common way to finance the purchase of a property in Portugal. Both residents or non-residents can apply for a mortgage from the Portuguese banks. The key benefit of taking out the Portuguese mortgage is that the lender will carry out the legal checks on the property and arrange for a valuation to take place. However, I always advise the clients to use a lawyer in all the process of buying a property. Another benefit that if you should decide to let your property in a short or a long-term contract, your rental income in euros may offset or cover the mortgage payments in euros from the Portuguese bank, which naturally hedge any currency risk. Should you decide to use non-euro mortgage facilities abroad, you'd be exposed to the foreign currency risk. Now, we have some different criteria if it is for a residential homes or for a second homes or non-resident people. So the banks consider it, some banks consider it that you are resident for this kind of residential homes if you are living here more than 5 years to have access of a loan for residential loans. The loans for residential can go up to 50 years. The maximum of age is between 70 to 80 years old, depending on the lender, and the max of the borrow is between 60 to 19% of the less value, the acquisition price or the valuation price. For the second homes or investments, the loan can go up to 30 years. The maximum age is between 70 to 80 years old, and the max borrow 60 and 70% of the value of the acquisition price or the evaluation price. We have as well a loan for the plot and the construction. This is an option as well. Usually, it's possible to get between 50 to 60% if you are non-resident, and can go up to 19% if you are a resident. The borrow, it's a combining costs of the land and the construction. However, this kind of mortgage are quite complex because it has a lot of evaluations. So if anyone needs this kind of advice, then I will help specifically, because this is not very easy, this kind of mortgage. Another thing that we need to see, to have considered, is the interest rate. We have two kinds of interest rates: the variable rate and the fixed rate, and even now we have the mixed rate. So the variable rate is always lower than the fixed rate. The variable rate is the spread plus the variable that can be 3, 6, or 12 months. In case the client decides to pay early redemption, will pay a penalty of 0.5%. In case it is a fixed rate, the early redemption penalty is 2%, and this kind of the loans just can go up to 30 years old, to 30 years. So the big difference is for the client, the fixed rate, it doesn't have any fluctuation regarding the variable. The variable rate, we don't know what will happen with the variable if one day will go up. To have the idea, the annual percentage rate for a fixed rate can be around 4.5, and for the variable rate, 3.3%. The process to get a mortgage in Portugal is easy for the client. It's not a very complex process. My company has a license to the Bank of Portugal, so we work with several banks here in Portugal. The client can send us all the documents that is needed, and the documents, it's quite a normal document. It's a credit report, 2 years of the tax return, proof of income, 3 months of bank statements. After that, I will study the process and I will choose the best banks for that client. Then I will receive the simulations from the bank and I will appoint a meeting with the client to explain the bank simulations. If the client agrees with the simulation, the second stage is apply for the evaluation of the property. This is made by an independent expert. With the value of the evaluation, we know the maximum value that the bank will loan. Remember that the bank just will borrow a percentage of the less value, or the valuation, or the price acquisition. So the third stage is the bank will issue the final credit letter, and this must be signed by the client. The client has 8 days for reflection, and after these 8 days, we can appoint the deed. So it's really a simple process. During this, maybe starting the process to the end, we'll have 1.5 months, 2 months, if we have all the documents. But there are some costs that the client should consider, such as the transfer tax, the stamp duty, the notary fees, the valuation fees, and the bank charge fees. So this is need to have much more money for all these costs. Now, I would like to speak on the rentals. Rentals in Portugal, we have the short-term rentals and the long-term rentals. For the long-term rentals, it's required a rental contract. It's pay a stamp duty that is 10% over 1 month of rent, requires energetic certificate, and the tax rate on rental income maximum is 28%. This is a much less bureaucratic rental than the short term. Of course, against the tax, we can deduct some expenses, such as the condominium charge, property tax, insurance, repairs, works. However, in this kind of simple long term, we are not allowed to deduct interest, shares, kitchens, all the things that we can take out from the apartment, the property, the tax will not accept. And the rentals is the long-term rentals for the landlord is really simple. For the long-term rentals for the tenant, it's required a Portuguese tax number. So even if people are here just for 2 months and is doing a long-term rental, must request the Portuguese tax number. Usually in Portugal, must give a deposit, give a notice when leaving, and usually the utility bills are not included in the rent. And the rents can be deducted on the tax income if you didn't. The short term for the landlord. So this is very regulated. And first, it's mandatory to request a rental license. This request is made online to the council where is the property. To open the accommodation, you must first request a rental license, and for that it is needed to open the activity in the tax office. And people must be aware that this is a business in Portugal, so it's not so simple as the long term. It must have insurance, it must have complaint books, so it has a lot of things to be aware. Another thing that is important to be aware when you have a short term is after the client make the check-in, you must report this to the SEF. Okay, usually people doesn't know that. For the tax point of view, the short terms has a lot of options to be considered. So even you can have capital gains even if you are not selling your property just because you open a short term. So always ask an advisor to help you if you should do a short-term rent, if you should open or not, because this can have a lot of consequences as in fiscal terms. Car matriculation. So we have car matriculation with tax exemption or without tax exemption. If you just want to bring your car to Portugal, but you are not moving your residency to Portugal, you can bring it, but you have to pay the tax. The tax in Portugal for cars are very higher. So before you come, it's better you ask to do a simulation. If the car has a big engine or a very higher CO2, probably you will pay a lot of tax. Without paying the tax, the process is simple because you just need the car registration, the certificate of conformity, the ID card or passport, fiscal number, and the car go to the inspection, and that's it, and pay the tax. Now, when you are moving to Portugal, each person can bring a car as tax exempt. A car or a moto can bring one for 4 persons. So in order to register a foreign car in Portugal, you will need some documents. There are ones more difficult than the others. The car registration, usually the clients have it, identification card and passport as well, fiscal number as well. Give the permission to the customer to see if your situation are good in Portugal. That is something quite easy. But then we have the cancellation of the resident. So, and this is a document that is issued by the competent authorities of the countries where you are coming. And this must showing the dates on which you took up and when you cancel the residence on that country. So it's really must say when you're starting to live there, or if it is the country that you're born, of course, doesn't say that, but must say the date that you cancel the residence and must say that you are moving to Portugal. Without this document, you are not able to have the car import with tax exemption. Another document that sometimes the client does have is the certificate of conformity. This is always asked in the garage, and sometimes they ask money for this document. And it is needed, and sometimes it's not so easy as well, is the documents that prove the residence on the country that you are coming, because sometimes it's just in the name of the man or in the name of the woman. But without these documents, so the document is to prove the residence in your home country for the last 6 months. It's to prove the residency or the country that you are coming. Can be house renting receipts, electricity bills, water bills, pay slips, tax. Doesn't need to be the 6 months of electricity or water. You can have 1 month of electricity, another month of water. What is needed that 6 months show your address on the country that you live. Another thing that is quite important to consider is the car must have been in your property for the least 6 months. Before you arrive, you had the car at least 6 months. You have 12 months to ask for this registration for tax exemption. You can sell or donate the car for 5 years. If you sell or donate the car until these 5 years, you have to pay the tax. You have to keep your residence in Portugal at least for 1 year, and during this you cannot go out of Portugal more than 1 month. Only you or your spouse or who lives with you in that address can drive the car. So you cannot just loan a car to a friend to drive it. That cannot happen, because if the police stop, you will have a fine. In case of that, of the owner, the spouse who came to Portugal as well can request the exemption of the car tax in 3 months. So if one of these conditions doesn't happen, you have to pay the tax. The process is, after we have all the documents, the process is simple, okay? So just to fill a few documents and sign. First, the car must go to inspection. This must be booked, this kind of inspection. We just have 3 centers here in the Algarve that are doing this kind of inspection. After the car goes to the inspection, then it's just the bureaucratic service. First go to the customs, then the process go to the IMT, then comes again to the customs, then goes to an IMT, and then to the registration. At the final, it goes to you receive the registration at your house. These are taking, even with COVID-19, these are taking about 1 month, the whole process. When we have all the documents, this is quite simple. The problem is sometimes when we don't have the necessary documents to do the process. Now, let me see. Now I will speak regarding the driving license. I don't know why, but I would like to show. Oh, okay. So, exchange the driving license. After you become resident in Portugal, you can exchange the driving license or just make the registration of the driving license. To exchange the driving license is needed the original driving license, the identification card or the passport, the fiscal number, the proof that you are resident. This is that document that Edwin spoke regarding that you get from the council, and the medical form. To get this medical form, first you must request the number of the public health center, okay? Without going to the public health center and get your ID cartão do utente, it's not possible the doctor give you this medical form. Now, because with COVID-19, we have to book with EXEMPTION, and the client must go because they need to see the person and take a photo and sign the forms. Or if you don't want to exchange the driving license, you just can do the registration of the driving license. The only difference here is you do not need the medical form, so you do not need to have your cartão do utente. Because of the Brexit, what I'm recommended is to exchange the driving license, because we don't know what will happen then after December, so it's better to exchange the driving license. However, the Portuguese driving license are taking about 1 year to come. If the client needs to drive away from Portugal, we can request always international driving license, and you can drive in any country with the international driving license, and they give you in 2 days. It's really something quite straightforward. And that's it.
Okay,
hello?
Thank you. Thank you. I've got one question here for you.
Yes.
Somebody here would like to import an electric car from France to Spain and wonders whether they still have to pay import duty or whether there's any tax to pay.
No. If it is electric, just the registration costs, no tax. The tax is exempt because it's electric. Just have to pay the registration, so the full process will be around 200 euros for registration and inspection.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and Celia, and thank you for sharing that information with us. Okay.